paint a picture for the American people, for the people watching, my constituents, why Taiwan matters, Dr. Miller. What would happen to the average American consumer and Americans' access to chips in the event of an invasion?
For phones, computers, telecoms infrastructure, certainly any artificial intelligence application, we would face enormous delays, huge inflation as a result of any disruption to the chip production in Taiwan.
Oh yeah, that sounds pretty dumb.
That was Andy Barr, representative from Kentucky, questioning a witness about chip manufacturing in Taiwan. What this hearing really highlights are the negative effects of the fact that, for the most part, we don't make anything in America anymore. And because of that dependence on other countries as far as our manufacturing goes, we now have to somehow or some way be responsible for defending their island. So instead of just having a government that allows American companies to manufacture products without being strangled by regulations or high taxes, globalists have set up a system of dependency where if Taiwan gets invaded, they're now saying we will not have any chips for phones, computers, etc. And if you think Ukraine has gotten a lot of money over the last 2 years, wait until Taiwan gets invaded. Whether or not that actually happens is yet to be seen, but why anyone would think it would be a good idea to be this dependent on another country for products is crazy to me. And we're not talking about some sort of insignificant gourmet cheese or a product that only comes from a particular region on the earth. I'm sure that if our government gets out of the way, we have more than enough companies to make these chips and to figure it out. That would require leaders in the government that actually want to fix the problem, and in most cases, they do not.
I'm open to what he's saying about a fee, because I think China is an exceptional case. I think what the Chamber of Commerce may be concerned about, however, is that this kind of a policy, this kind of protectionist policy could evolve into something beyond China, and that could be used even in cases where we have reciprocal free trade agreements with allies and partners. That, I think, would be a mistake. I do not believe that we should try to counter China by imitating Chinese industrial policy. The advantage that we have in our country is that we're capitalists. We do believe in free and reciprocal trade, not with China, because China is an exceptional case and they don't engage in free trade. But I think it would be a mistake to try to copy Chinese industrial policies, because that actually is the best way to misallocate resources. Free markets are the answer in our competition with China generally. Let me ask Dr. Miller a question about Taiwan and semiconductors in Taiwan. I was recently in Taiwan with a bipartisan delegation, and we were able to tour the very impressive semiconductor capabilities there. We visited TSMC. I think they have 30% of global market share of advanced semiconductor chips, the chips that power artificial intelligence. We had the opportunity to ask the chairman of TSMC about a Taiwan invasion scenario, and he was very direct. He said an invasion of the island would take us down instantaneously. Paint a picture for the American people, for the people watching, my constituents, why Taiwan matters, Dr. Miller. What would happen to the average American consumer and Americans' access to chips in the event of an invasion?
Representative, thank you for the question. During the pandemic, when there were relatively minor chip shortages, we saw an experiment in real time as to just how costly that would be. I mentioned in my testimony, the auto industry alone faced hundreds of billions of dollars in cars that couldn't be sold because they couldn't source chips. And it wasn't just autos, it was tractors, it was hearing aids, it was across the manufacturing sector of the economy. And that was at a time when there were minor disruptions. As you said, Taiwan is the world's most important producer of chips, especially when it comes to the most advanced chips. And so for phones, computers, telecoms infrastructure, certainly any artificial intelligence application, we would face enormous delays, huge inflation as a result of any disruption to the chip production in Taiwan.
Well, I think that's why we need deterrence with Taiwan, and we also need to have supply chain resiliency and build out our diversification of access to chips beyond China. Mr. Paul, let me ask you about Subic Bay and shipbuilding. When I was in Subic Bay, we spoke to Cerberus about their decision to buy the shipyard. and the State Department touted the success of an American company purchasing this critical infrastructure. But we also saw how much the shipyard and port is underutilized, and Cerberus expressed concern that they were not making returns on investment. How can the United States government actively encourage or help U.S. companies invest in the capabilities at Subic, and can Subic be part of the answer to our shipbuilding capabilities and part of the deterrent strategy in the Western Pacific?
Yeah, Mr. Barr, I'm glad you raised up that question, because I do believe that there are possibilities, that this is not a hopeless case, and I'm glad you mentioned that. The idea behind just going back to the fee is that it would provide a revenue source to have some investment in new technology, in port upgrades, and in workforce training that we're going to need to scale up. We're at such a breaking point now. We have a very fragile supply chain in shipbuilding. We've lost 20,500 suppliers in the shipbuilding sector over the last 2 decades. And so we need it to be agile, and that is going to take some investment. Yes, I do believe that we should operate as a free market whenever possible. Even Adam Smith suggested shipbuilding is a unique case, and that you need to find revenue sources to support your domestic.
And can I say, Mr. Paul, I appreciate your testimony. I appreciate the comments from my friend from California, Mr. Khanna, and I'm open to that, but I want to make sure it's limited to China. I think it would be a mistake to broaden that, and a source of revenue to revitalize our shipbuilding capacity, great, I'm for it. But let's not let that evolve into an overly broad industrial policy that limits free trade with allies and partners. That's my point. Now, tell me about Subic and Cerberus, and we need to get back into Subic Bay, and does that present some shipbuilding opportunities with the Philippines?
It may. Let me respond for the record, since I've seen enough time, but I'd be happy to explicate more of that in a written response.